Hello and welcome everyone, Lionheart here, and today I'm taking a look at MSI's X370 SLI Plus motherboard. MSI very kindly loaned me the SLI Plus along with an AMD Ryzen 7 1700, an 8-core, 16-thread CPU for testing. This is my first hands-on experience with Ryzen and the X370 chipset, so I'm very interested to see how it performs. Retailing at £149 on Amazon UK and $162 on Amazon US. The SLI Plus comes in roughly where I would expect it to, considering it's not one of MSI's gaming class motherboards, and therefore doesn't feature all the bells and whistles that their gaming grade motherboards feature up the spectrum, such as dedicated overclocking buttons, coded LED debugging, and gaming software features packed in. There are some, and obviously you can download them if you want to, but it doesn't have all of that supplied with it. Therefore, this isn't a motherboard for necessarily the extreme overclocker, or perhaps even those that just must have those higher end gaming features. However, this is a solid board for those wanting a no-frills Ryzen experience and just want to get stuck in. Let's take a look at the specifications of the SLI Plus. It's an ATX form factor board featuring the AMD X370 chipset, with dual-channel RAM support up to 64GB in total capacity. RAM speeds for Ryzen have been a bit of a talking point so far due to the default memory speed limitations of 2400 MHz when using a 7th gen A-series CPU like the Ryzen 1700. Supported RAM modules of higher speeds up to 3200 MHz can be utilized via activating the A-XMP option in the BIOS, and MSI do provide on their website a full list of currently supported RAM modules. For my testing, however, I was using two 8GB sticks of a Pacer DDR4 2400 MHz RAM. So, carrying on for the graphics interface on the motherboard, there's two 3.0 16x PCIe slots and one 2.0 16x slot. This, as the name of the board might suggest, means that it supports two-way NVIDIA SLI and three-way AMD Crossfire. There's also three PCIe x1 slots for expansion cards, etc. For storage, you've got six SATA 6GB ports and one Turbo M.2 port located in between the two PCIe 3.0 slots. Let's take a look at the rear I/O panel. We can assess the various connectivity capabilities of this board. Here we have a PS2 port for the mouse and keyboard input. Two USB 2.0 ports below that. Next we have a DVI-D port, HDMI, four USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, and a LAN port. Then we have a Type A USB 3.1 Gen 2 port, and below that we have a USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type C port, which is a nice inclusion on this board. Again, it's not necessarily a feature I would expect, but it's nice to have that kind of future connectivity option there already. Finally, at the end of the I/O, we have 7.1 audio connections, which feature MSI's Audio Boost technology, with its own separated audio layers for clean audio channels, high-quality audio capacitors, and an isolated audio channel on the motherboard itself, with an LED strip to indicate that dedicated channel. It should mean that there's less interference. You know, your audio, because of that, should be clearer and better. In terms of design and features, I've already mentioned that while this isn't one of top end of MSI's motherboard spectrum, which often traditionally have that very strong red and black dragon logo theme, the SLI Plus still features some rather nice bits and pieces. Notably, I'm actually a fan of the design and colour scheme that MSI have gone for with this board. The black and silver design I think looks great and will complement pretty much any case or set of components that you want to put in there. It's not too flashy to overpower if you want to have a particular color build, and if you want to go RGB crazy, then you can do that as well, and it won't really interfere with that. In fact, actually, this board does surprisingly support some RGB effects and connectivity via the RGB connector you can find at the bottom of the board, and that can be configured via the MSI gaming app. As this motherboard is part of MSI's Pro series. We also see that branded on the I/O cover that's at the top left of the board, which is actually pretty sturdy and offers some added protection to the connections underneath. MSI have also included their steel armor protection to the two PCIe 3.0 slots and the M.2 port, offering more robust slots and ports with added EMI shielding for you there. The board also features plenty of fan headers, there's 6 in total, and a pump header for a water cooling CPU solution if that's the route you want to go with cooling your system. That combined with some rather large heat sinks, the SLI Plus has got you covered for creating a cool PC system. The fans are all controllable by the BIOS, and that's MSI's ClickBIOS 5, which I'm rather familiar with now. It's added implementation and upgrades of their previous ClickBIOS that I've been using for a fair few years now. You could still do with a couple of extra features here and there, but overall it's pretty easy to navigate and offers reasonable overclocking options. You've got the overclocking genie there, or the game boost button, and that adds a preset overclock to your CPU. In the case of the Ryzen 7 1700, it took the base clock from a rather lowly 3.0 GHz to 3.5, and that was stable for my testing. I did experiment a bit further with overclocking, but I couldn't actually get the 1700 Ryzen stable at anything over 3.8 GHz. By default, the Ryzen 7 1700 runs with AMD's Precision Boost, which takes it from 3.0 GHz to 3.7, but I'd need to do more testing with Ryzen CPUs and compatible motherboards in order to determine whether it was just this board that doesn't really support that much overclocking headroom and it just maxed out, or whether the CPU that I had kind of hit its limit. There aren't, as far as I can tell, that many reviews of the SLI Plus out at the moment at the time of recording this, and there's only a few I found on Newegg customer reviews, so far wasn't really able to draw any firm conclusion from my findings versus those that others have posted online. But it'll be interesting to see over the next few weeks as potentially more people review this board and more people pick it up. One thing I will agree with, though, with the Newegg reviews of this motherboard is that it does oddly take a sometimes worryingly long amount of time to post. Thankfully for me, I didn't have any issue with actually getting to post. It always posted, but took a good 30 seconds or so to actually get to post, and this is, say, compared to my main PC, my War Machine, which takes about 5 seconds after you've powered it on to hit the post screen. Normally it's about 5-10 seconds, and that's pretty normal for most machines, and it's just takes a very long time. I actually timed it, and 30 seconds may not actually sound that long, but when you're actually waiting for it to post and getting to that screen, either you want to get into the BIOS or just let it run through and load up the operating system, it does seemingly take a lot longer than it should. Some users on Newegg suggested that it's hopefully something MSI can work on. Apparently it's something that's happened on some of the, I think it's the B350 chipset boards, so hopefully it's something that can be sorted out with an update or a new BIOS at some point. And I don't think there's any harm in having a long post time, but it's just something that when you don't see your PC turning on immediately, you do start worrying. Anyway, overall for the X370 SLI Plus, I feel it's a competent motherboard. It obviously does feel lacking when compared to previous MSI boards that I've looked at, which have been from their top tier gaming class and tiers. They're feature rich with overclocking options, but the SLI Plus is still, as I said at the start of this review, a solid board for those wanting a no-frills Ryzen experience. And in fact, that's unfair, because there are plenty of frills to the SLI Plus. It's just not as much as, paying into the next £50 to £100 price bracket, or $50 to $100 or so. But if you want to get stuck right in with Ryzen, then this is certainly a good board to take a look at. Just bear in mind that you might have a little bit of a scarily long post time at the start. Finally, I briefly want to share a few thoughts on the AMD Ryzen 7 1700. I know this is a motherboard review, but I want to talk about the CPU a little bit because it's my first time getting hands-on with it, and I was actually really impressed with its multi-threaded CPU performance. I did a test with Adobe Premiere Pro with a 10-minute 3.8GB 1080p video recording, some gameplay footage, And I compared the render times of the Ryzen 7 1700 versus the CPU in my War Machine PC, which is the Intel i7 5930K, which I will state now that this is totally not an even or fair comparison, but that's all I had available at the time to compare. And I wanted to see, you know, how close had AMD managed to get with their Ryzen series of CPUs. So the 1700 Ryzen CPU is clocked at 3.7 gigahertz using that precision boost, so it's running at 3.7 when the most demanding of tasks, which this Adobe Premiere Pro render was, and the i7 5930K was clocked at 3.6 gigahertz. So I was using the same YouTube 1080p Premiere Pro preset to render these out. I wasn't using any kind of CUDA or OpenGL rendering from the graphics cards and systems, it was all just on the CPU. The i7 5930K took 11 minutes and 16 seconds to render, while the Ryzen 7 1700 took 11 minutes and 39 seconds to complete the render. And while in gaming tests, the Ryzen 1700 certainly does fall behind Intel's latest offering, and in some cases by a fair bit, I actually am very impressed by how close the Ryzen 1700 was able to get in my render tests compared to the i7 5930K. You know, it's what, like 23 seconds in it? That's to me not that bad, and that's a massive step. Okay, considering the Ryzen 7 1700 does have 2 more physical cores than the i7. The i7 5930K is a 6-core 12-thread CPU, whereas the Ryzen 7 1700 is an 8-core 16-thread CPU. I'm very impressed they've managed to kind of bring that multi-threaded performance a fair bit closer, and when you compare that to the CPU I was using, which I said was totally unfair, it's £200 more than the Ryzen 7 1700, and to only be 23 seconds out, that's to me really, really impressive, and I'm certainly keen to see how AMD performs moving forward, as these are very encouraging results. Also worth mentioning the included Wraith Spire CPU cooler, which I never thought I'd say this about a stock cooler. It does feature RGB lighting because everything must be RGB now, of course, and you can configure that, I believe, via various software. I wasn't able to get that working on the X370 because I don't think the Mystic Light software had been updated yet to support the Ryzen CPU and the cooler and all that yet. But yeah, it actually works really well. The CPU topped out in that render test at 64 degrees, and it never went higher than about 58 to 60 degrees when I was gaming. And that was all at 3.7 gigahertz. So there's plenty room to, you know, overclock with the CPU with that stock cooler. And it's a lot more robust than past stock coolers from both AMD and Intel. And it actually, yeah, it looks like a decent product. It doesn't feel cheap. So I was very impressed by that. Anyway, thanks again to MSI for loaning me the X370 SLI Plus and the AMD Ryzen 7 1700 CPU for this review. I hope you've enjoyed it, and feel free to share your thoughts on the motherboard and Ryzen down in the comment section. And don't forget to check out the description for all the various links to the X370 SLI Plus. Until the next one, don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Take pride on the Legion. Check out my affiliates and sponsors, XMG, Greenman Gaming, and Overclockers UK. Until the next one, ciao for now.